Okay, welcome to the April 9th Planning Commission meeting, and if I can have everybody's attention, if you would join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll get a report from Planning Director, EJ. Or roll call. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
But I'll get up
do that. But that'll give you a chance to get up there, Kathy.
Mr. Sevison's absent. Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Moss? Here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Nader?
Here.
Mr. Ricucci?
Here.
Mr. Denial?
Here. Okay, we'll get the report now. Yeah.
Members of the Commission, I'm EJ Valdi with the Planning Services Division. Our last board meeting was up in Tahoe. We heard the Faulkner Garage. Your commission approved that. No appeal was filed, so we can consider that one on its way, so that's good news. I want to talk about some scheduling issues for the upcoming April 23rd Planning Commission meeting. We want to cancel that. And the meeting after that is scheduled for May 14th. What I would like to do is entertain you, see if you guys would be willing to come in a week earlier and have a meeting on May 7th. We have some projects that we're trying to get to commission without waiting a full 5 weeks, possibly only 4 weeks. So,
you want an answer now?
So, yeah. Well, just a heads up. If you guys, you may have to look at calendars and so forth. But what I'm thinking is. We won't have the meeting on April 23rd. We'll reconvene on May 7th, and then we'll cancel the May 14th meeting.
Yeah, I'm
good on
So
that.
if you guys if that works, if you find out there's a conflict, let me know.
Yeah, I mean,
we can work with it. But if we have a quorum, it could serve us all well. All right.
Okay, so tentatively, it looks like it'll work.
And one of the items today is the Ponds Pavilion and Lofts. We're asking for a continuance on that today. So if that was granted, we would be looking at that date of May 7th. There's the Grove. It's a subdivision modification down at Granite Bay. We would also want to have that on May 7th. There's also a appeal of a design review decision regarding the electric fence. That's also a Granite Bay project. So we'd like to have at least those three. I'm not sure that is it. There's a lot of projects in the pipe right now, so if we can add to that agenda, we would, but we would like to do all that on May 7th. So that's all I have. Unless you have questions, we can get underway.
Thank you, EJ.
All right, thank you.
Okay, at this time, if there's anyone in the public that would like to comment on anything other than any items that are before us today, now is your chance. Yeah, come on up and let us know what you're thinking. Sure.
And do one date.
I prepared this, and the Grove was supposed to be on the April 23rd meeting. My name is Arlene Keelis. I live at 8171 Berg Street in Granite Bay. I'm unable to attend the 423 hearing due to work. This is regarding the Grove at Granite Bay and the applicant's request to modify conditions of approval. The applicant is scheduled before you that day, or what? They went before the Granite Bay MAC last week as an action item. The MAC unanimously denied the request to strike down and remove a significant condition of approval to allow solid fencing along Berg Street within the front setback. I moved to Berg in '94. Berg is about a half-mile long with only 12 homes along the east side. The rural, open atmosphere attracted me, and Berg has retained that feel even today. In '94, I researched and found this parcel had entitlements to construct 21 homes. The future lots along Berg Street had front yards facing our homes. It was designed to blend new construction with existing to look like a neighborhood street. In 2004, Coker Ewing brought forth a different proposal, 32 homes with backyards facing existing neighbors along Berg. The neighbors and community fought the proposed erection of solid fencing along Berg. The compromise were conditions that allowed the construction of solid fencing, but set that back to 50 feet of edge of easement called the front setback. The commissioners felt this would discourage a developer to use the commissioners felt this would encourage the developer to use landscaping instead of fencing to preserve vegetation for the benefit of the community and Berg Street neighbors and provide privacy to homeowners. This plan was approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. This process encompassed significant community participation. Now, the builder developer intends to renege on the conditions by asking you to agree to a modification that would essentially overturn the most significant aspect that affects the community and neighborhood. They propose to allow the erection of solid or partial solid fencing within the front setback. At the MAC meeting, the applicant was not able to define partial solid. A member in the audience asked, does partial refer to a shortening length of solid fencing or fencing that is partially solid? The applicant also stated to the MAC that the modification is necessary to free up restrictions caused by the conditions so homeowners can construct stone barbecues within the front setback. However, they've already installed one within the front setback on the model home lot 32. And a MAC board member recalled that barbecue structures are a landscape element. The applicant stated solid fencing is necessary to provide greater privacy in the backyards of lots that front Berg. However, privacy is easily mitigated with greenery, as stated by a MAC board member. Last summer, the builder constructed and handsomely landscaped the model homes. They installed landscaping within a landscape easement, but sparsely planted tiny photinias and pine saplings. Lot 1 has only one lone sapling within the easement. I provided snapshots and included myself as a height reference. I'm 4 feet 11 inches tall. Greenery can provide privacy. I provided snapshots of plantings within the subdivision to affirm that. I ask you to please support the MAC's decision to unanimously deny the request to modify the conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that has any comments on anything? Seeing none, we'll close it and we will go to our item number 1, Morgan Knolls Residential Subdivision.
Good morning, Lisa Carnahan. I was looking for the other, there was 2 clickers, but I guess I'll just go with the one. The other one was for this one does not have a really good laser, but we will
Lisa,
make it work.
There's a pointer right up on right in front of you. That other.
Oh.
Like the pin.
A much better one, I might add.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, good morning. Yes, this is the Morgan Knolls Residential Subdivision. As you can see here, this gives you a little regional context. You got 80 out here. This is Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan. Here's Dry Creek. So it's right on the corner of Walurga and PFE. And I'm going to have to do the dueling banjos thing here. So there we go. So here's the Morgan Knolls. You've got Hidden Crossing Subdivision, which is being built as we speak. The Riolo Vineyards specific plan area with Parcel J, or now called Mariposa, right here. You have what's not shown here is Morgan Place, Morgan Ranch, Morgan something, Morgan Place, I think it is, which is high density residential along with the Sabre City area. In 1990, when the community plan was adopted, there were land use designations for low density residential, high density residential, but there wasn't anything to accommodate the middle range, 2 to 4. The Morgan Knolls comes in with 61 units and a density of 3.7 right in the middle of that range. The proposed community plan designation would be to include the medium density residential area with 2 to 4 acres. As you can see here, here's the Morgan Knolls area. You've got, this is the Riolo Vineyard Parcel J section over here. You've got commercial, low density residential, and high density residential surrounding it. Staff is in support of the request to to include the medium density residential in the community plan and change the land use to medium density residential, given that the proposed density is compatible with the surrounding land uses, and that the proposed use is a less intensive use than what could be there under the commercial aspect of it. You've got about 8.9 acres of commercial, or in that range here. The commercial component can accommodate high density, multiple family residential. So they could accommodate up to about 194 units just on the commercial portion. And then you have the low density residential to add into that for 200 or so units that could be built on this, and they're requesting a, if you will, a down zone to allow 61 units. So here, they're, along with the amendment to the community plan, they are asking for a rezone, again, to change it from commercial and low-density residential to RSAGB6, so residential single-family, ag combining with a building lot size minimum of 6,000 square feet. This is the plan that was presented to the MAC. As you can see here, this is the main entrance off of Walerga. It is a right-in, right-out only. There are 3 connections to the adjacent Hidden Crossing subdivision on the north and 2 to the east, which allows for ingress and egress out of the Hidden Crossing subdivision here and up in here. So essentially, for traffic and circulation purposes, they will function as one subdivision. Mitigated neg deck was prepared for this project, and an errata was included as an attachment to your staff report, and it was just to further clarify 2 issues. One, the PCWA wanted to make it clear that they would need to annex into Zone 1 in order to get Cal-Am to provide water. And then the other was just to clarify further the park dedication fees that are, but neither one of the things in the errata change any. There's no new mitigation that's increased. There's no new significant impacts at all. This did go to the MAC as an action item last month, and one of the things the MAC asked for was increased setbacks from the roadways. So the applicant went back and they did revise the tentative map, as you see here, to increase this area here by 5 feet. The one, I think the main issue that was brought up, and the reason, it was a 2-2 vote, so there is no recommendation from the MAC for this item. There was the concern of the possibility of creating the medium density residential would create a precedent for future projects, and like it was explained there, and as you know, each project stands on its own merits and is analyzed based upon the site-specific conditions, and so any project that may come in the future would have to be analyzed in that vein. The land use designation doesn't occur anywhere else. However, the densities, that 2 to 4 range, occur in multiple places. In the adjacent Hidden Crossing.
I'm talking about as the county's official designation doesn't exist yet. It's medium density.
The medium density is not included in the Dry Creek Community Plan currently.
It doesn't exist anywhere in the county as far as the definition of medium density.
Oh.
high density and low density. Does this medium density exist anywhere else by definition, anywhere else in the county?
Yeah, we have medium densities in all the different portions of the county, so.
That's what I was asking.
This is the preliminary landscape portion showing the tot lot down at the southern area and the meandering 8-foot walkway along the edge, the landscaping. And this is a really telling slide in that it shows the neighborhood compatibility. Whenever you're looking at a rezone, you know, we always analyze, okay, what does it look like in context with the surrounding parcels? Well, as you can see, here's the Morgan Knolls, here's the hidden crossing parcel, and the parcel J, or Mariposa. And this is the other one to the south that I mentioned that's of higher density. As you can see, the proposed lot configuration really melds well with the adjacent parcel. In fact, as I said, there's 3 connections to the hidden crossing, which would provide 2 additional access points for people coming in here, one on the Willerga side and one on the PFE side, along with their own right in, right out.
Lisa? In Riolo and also in Morgan Ranch, those densities look higher than this. I know you said that the one in Morgan Ranch is higher.
This is higher. This is a high-density
Right,
residential,
and
as is this.
What is that over in Riolo right there?
This is about 3.5.
Is it considered high, or is it?
Well, it's in that medium range, but it's
it's
within the Riolo Vineyard specific plan, so.
Right.
But this is at 3.7 approximately, excuse me. And overall, although there's some that are tighter here, they have some larger ones also, so the overall density is 3.7. So it's very compatible with what they're proposing.
Lisa? The property surrounding this, that is also medium density?
This one,
Yeah, what is the density there?
it's 2.7, which would fall into the medium density range.
So did they have to go through the same process at
They
some point?
didn't, it was a PD at that time,
Okay.
so they had their own.
Yeah, well,
But the density, just like the Riolo Vineyard specific plan, it's a specific plan, so they didn't need to get a change to the community plan. However, the density is the
It's
same.
the same.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The applicant has requested a variance also to the lot size. I'll go back to that one real quick. From 40 to 50 for single story. At the time of the writing of this staff report, that was the request, was 40, increase it from 40 to 50 for single stories and 35 to 45 for 2 stories, which staff was not supportive of. They have come back since then, and the applicant, Dave Cook, will be discussing somewhat of a compromise that they've come up with, and during his part of the presentation. With that, I'm going to close my portion out, recommending that the commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the mitigated neg deck, errata, and mitigation monitoring report, adopt a resolution to amend the community plan to allow the medium density residential, adopt a resolution to change the land use designation for this particular parcel to medium density to residential, adopt an ordinance rezoning the parcel to res ag with a BX of 6,000 square foot minimum, approve the tennis subdivision map, and deny the variance as reported in the staff report.
Lisa, one question on all the other areas in the county. Is there when you're talking about the 40 and 35% to 50 and 45, what is the normal across the county for all lots?
Well, it depends. It's based upon what zone district they're in. for residential single-family zone district, which this is wanting to go to, it is the 40% for single stories and 35% for 2 stories.
So you're saying really across the county, there's not a set
It is. It's just within the,
within
each zone district would have,
a different from the next zone district and stuff. But I mean, overall in the county, is it 50? I guess my question is, a lot of jurisdictions that I know that aren't Placer County, whether it's cities and stuff, it's 50% is sort of a standard. And I was just wondering, you know, from the county standpoint, in other districts and stuff, is it higher, same, lower?
I think Roseville's 35% in an R1. Might be higher in something else. And actually at Tahoe when we were up there, we had to vote on that to go to 50%. So it's not standard. 50% isn't standard, at least not that I know of.
no, it's not standard, no. But there have been other instances of,
Sure.
like you had mentioned, variances. So.
Okay.
And
Thank
with that, I'll turn it over to Dave Cook, unless anybody has any other questions for me. Nope.
Thank you, Lisa. Dave Cook, RCH Group. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thanks for taking the time this morning to go through this. Just to clarify, Commissioner Denio, on your question, I think the 40% is actually pretty standard throughout the county within, as Lisa said, the RS district. But what you've got is, I think, a little different paradigm in terms of the lot sizes that we've seen historically versus where the market is going today. And that's a little bit about my discussion in terms of why, with our modified approach, we see a need for that variance on the coverage for single-story homes. So I want to go back to this slide because I think it really is helpful from a standpoint of taking what was designated in the community plan as a commercial parcel that would have basically mirrored the one that's included in the Rio Vineyard specific plan, and looking at something that works in today's market and something that is going to be more consistent with the surrounding existing and proposed neighborhoods that are underway now and approved with Morgan Place and Hidden Crossing. The configuration and the location in this corner made it difficult to do commercial because it's right in, right out only, and that starts to really impact your ability to attract tenants because the circulation is key. So we took this approach with slightly smaller lots, but lots that would be compatible with and blend with the adjacent neighborhood so that when this is all developed to the passerby, it shouldn't be all that apparent that these are different neighborhoods. It should feel fairly consistent, even though the product will be slightly different. A couple things that we've worked on, starting on the outside, are the sound walls, because sound attenuation is necessary out here based on the traffic and the noise on Walerga and PFE. The community plan prefers, and it was stated at the MAC, we don't want to see sound walls. We'd rather see the berm. And it's something that personally I've struggled with since the Morgan Creek project, which I was involved in, and numerous others, where we really believe that with the berm and then privacy fencing, you end up with more of a physical anomaly out there because it's going to be a bigger hump. It's not going to look as natural as we think this can look if properly landscaped. So what this shows, we need 10 foot of noise attenuation or 10-foot walls relative to pad height off of Walerga because there's greater traffic volume. We only need 6 feet on PFE, and this gives you a sense of scale on how that's going to look, where a portion of that 10-foot is handled by the berm, the other portion by a sound wall, but that sound wall is meant to disappear over time. Now, full disclosure, we all know that when it's initially put in, you put in your planning, it is going to look like this for a time frame, but with the right kind of plant palette, and particularly trailing vines and fig, etc., over time, that wall will disappear and it will serve to reduce the noise in those backyards to the 60 decibel level. And this will look we believe, more in scale with the community in the surrounding area. So with that, let's go to the variance and the issue of setbacks and the massing. This exhibit here was based on sort of the typical lot configuration that exists in the center or the core of the neighborhood, which is a 65 by 110 foot lot, 7150. The average lot size in here, even though the B6 zone gives us a minimum of 6,000, our average is actually about 7,800. And there are more than, I want to say 40, I think it's 45, 46% that are 7,500 and below. So the 6,000 is, we had to go to the minimum lot size to establish that. In that zone district, we could do 5-foot side yard setbacks on both sides for a total of 10. We could do a 12.5-foot front setback, but that's not what we're trying to accomplish. Again, we wanted a neighborhood that was going to look and feel more compatible with the existing neighborhood that's underway now. And so we're proposing 7.5-foot side yard setbacks, whether it's a single story or a two-story, for a total of 15 feet. Whereas on a single story, you could go down to 5 feet. We just think that it's going to create more space between the homes, and it's going to feel better as it's experienced both from the perimeter as well as interior streets. This little exhibit is really, maybe the easiest way to graphically illustrate the difference that you might see with 5 and 5 versus 7.5 and 7.5. We attempted to replicate that with the prior slide, and it's just not that perceivable at this scale. So suffice it to say that you can see that these homes stretch out to those minimum or theoretical minimum 5-foot setbacks on the lots, but staying at the 20-foot setback in front and, in fact, in the back. So our proposal, as Lisa indicated, when we went through the staff report, we understood that perhaps our intentions had been either poorly presented or somewhat misinterpreted. There's never been a desire to have larger two-story homes than might otherwise be provided with that 35% coverage. So we're modifying our proposal to request 50% lot coverage only for single-story, but only for 20 of the lots because of that pattern in the center where we're constricted with this 110 by 65. We want to make sure that we can get roughly half the lots with single-story homes, but have the latitude to have a large enough single-family home that works in there. With the normal coverage, well, let's back up. 2,600 to 3,200 square foot habitable space is the objective for the single-story homes, 3,000 to 3,800 for the two-story homes. Of the current coverage standards, you're only going to get, and you can see with this little diagram, once you take out about 530 square feet for a garage, staying with our self-imposed 7.5, 7.5, keeping the 20-foot minimum setback and adapting to the same conditions which Hidden Crossing accepted, where the garage sits back so that from an elevation standpoint, the garage doesn't dominate the streetscape. We can only, filling in these boxes, to get to the 40% coverage, we end up with a net 2,300 square foot single-story home. And in today's market, that just doesn't quite get it. The shifting demographic, the desire for folks to have master down, sometimes a plan with 2 masters. Folks are entertaining more. They've got bigger closets, bigger master suites. We're trying to stay with the market, and the yard is not as important. And I would contend that in this neighborhood, close proximity to our community park, they've got great recreational facilities there. Perhaps with the increase as shown here, even though we could attain the 50% and still keep a 20-foot rear yard setback, although the zoning code allows us to go to 10 on single story, with the lot depths we have, we can get to the 50%, still keep that 20 in the back, the 20 in the front. We're reducing potentially landscaped or irrigated areas, which is important as we go forward. And consequently, with the 50% max coverage, now that footprint, when you add this other 10% here, you can get basically a box of 3575, subtract out the garage. Now we're right around the 3,000 square foot target for that larger single-story home that we're looking for. So that's the modified proposal. And again, where you'll see, if you will see this from a physical reality, is going to be basically in the back, not on the sides, not on a compromise or reduction in the front yard setback.
Excuse me, Dave?
Yes.
So am I to understand then you're no longer looking, or you never were looking for a different coverage for the two-story?
We started out asking for it, and I really think it took the staff report interpolating what that could do on some of these lots and the size of home that would result in, and went back with my client and said, what are we really trying to attain here? And it's not to have that large a two-story home. It was really always to accomplish the larger single-story home.
So current proposal is for single-story only to 50% on 20 lots? Was that what I understood?
Correct. Somewhat different than where we started. And again, realization that, you know, the interpretation, if that was applied to all lots, because we do have quite a few lots that are greater than 8,000 feet, just about a third of them are larger than 8,000. We don't want these to be McMansions. We simply want to be able to get that larger single-story unit on there. So in going back, reviewing the staff report, we've dug in, and this is what we're proposing is one story only, go from 40 to 50%, but that would apply to no more than 20 lots, and it would only apply to those lots which are less than 7,500 square feet. So we're not going to apply that to a 10,000 square foot lot to where we could do a, 4,500 square foot single story, for example. And then this variance, because it would apply to a limited and specific number of lots once assigned, that can be documented and controlled by virtue of notations in the development notebook, so that each lot which has that right or privilege is going to be so noted, and the others are going to indicate the standard coverage there.
How many of the lots are, just out of the 61 are below 7,500 square feet? I mean, you're only asking for 20, but is there 30, 40 of them? Or?
There are 28.
Oh, there's 28,
yeah.
Okay.
And so in looking at the map, not knowing, because you don't want to pre-plot everything right now, just mathematically trying to determine how many do we think we might need within that core of the subdivision. And 20 is a number that our client is comfortable with. So again, back to the compatibility, we think that with this, there are findings that need to be made to support a variance. And we think that there are some special circumstances related to this property, and those include the fact that this is essentially a voluntary downzoning. And the county's not asking us to do this. This is the developer, our client, has asked to be able to do a residential project rather than commercial. There are constraints, as I mentioned, with the ingress and egress, but we felt that this was going to be more compatible with the adjacent neighborhoods, but offer another range of residential densities in the area. So compatible, but not exactly like the others, and not the high density that this commercial zoning does in fact allow. As Lisa indicated, it would be nearly 200 units on this same property. The project's been designed to create a cohesive and sort of a clean transition from the adjacent properties, as I mentioned, so that it all appears to be part of the same development, and to connect to the roads that were already stubbed from the Hidden Knolls project. What you've got here is, with those existing connection points and the shape of this, you have limited options in terms of how you approach the land planning. If you've got to tie into these streets, and you start to do the math from your setbacks along the perimeter roads, you're limited in terms of how many lots are you going to be able to get, what are those sizes, and given that we're trying to attain a 65-foot wide lot, not the 50 that would be allowed in the B6 zone district, but 65, mathematically, all of a sudden you find yourself to where you can't get the number of lots that you would otherwise like. We started out hoping that we might be able to get somewhere closer to 75 or 80. And it wasn't attainable with the objective of the lot size we were trying to get. So in order to get lots where we could do some single story, where they would really address today's market demands, we ended up having to go slightly larger. And with this shape, we have more frontage overall in terms of improvement cost than does Hidden Knolls. We're about 1,640 lineal feet of frontage improvements, whereas they're 1,000. And we go through and do this math on a per lot basis. Every one of these lots in here has a burden of maybe 13 lineal feet if you were to amortize it. I don't want to put it in dollars, but that's each lot's share of those frontage improvements. Morgan Knolls has more than double that. It's 27 lineal feet of improvement obligation for those frontage improvements. Furthermore, there's a drainage swale that runs across here. That requires wetland permitting. That requires additional grading. That requires additional drainage improvements, upsizing of a drain line across Valerga. All those costs, which are difficult to amortize against a smaller number of lots, had we gone with large enough lots to avoid having to do the variance. I think the other thing to point out is this design and this neighborhood really address one of the key community plan goals, which is protect and enhance the character of the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan in a way that's compatible with the physical and natural constraints and features present in the community. What's present is an existing neighborhood. What's coming is what's been approved here. So we're trying to stay within that context. Additionally, in the general plan, the county shall encourage, this is 1B3, the planning and design of new residential subdivisions to emulate the best characteristics, e.g. form, scale, and general character of existing nearby neighborhoods. And general plan policy 1B7 states that the county shall require residential subdivisions to be designed to provide well-connected internal and external street and pedestrian systems. So again, we're bound by the physical reality, but also to an extent the general plan in terms of how we approach the design of this. So in addition to these design elements, we've increased the setback off of PFE based on the feedback from the MAC. We had the depth on those lots, so we were able to pull it back another 5 feet. We're offering to provide side yard setbacks of 7.5 feet rather than the minimum of 5, which is standard in the county. And the rear yard setbacks, which are 10-foot minimum for single story, we will be able to provide 20 foot on those. Again, we're willing to limit the applicability of that variance to single story homes only and only 20 lots. And finally, the design of this really follows the smart growth principles that SACOG expounds. And as we move further through this drought, I think that's going to become all the more important. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but would thank you for your support on items 1 through 5, and hopefully the commission can make the findings to support the modified variance that we've proposed.
Dave, is the landscaping in front of the sound wall, is that critical to the function of the sound wall, or is that just intended to hide it?
The latter. It will soften the noise, but it's the wall or the berm, it's the physical structure that really does the sound attenuation. But it's a matter of trying to make it look, in time, once the planting matures, just trying to make it look more natural than either a stark wall or a berm, which is not a land, a 10-foot berm is not a landform that we see out in this part of the area.
And I understand that. I guess I just am hesitant to keep continuing to require more landscaping and more landscaping and more landscaping when we don't have water to keep it going. I'd rather see a nicer, prettier wall built and less greenery.
Right.
That's just going to go ugly anyway if we can't water it.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but it's that balancing act between what the community plan objectives and goals are and what we've heard, and so we're trying to strike that balance. we've got a little bit of turf, and we perhaps need to look at that high water demand element of the landscape plan as we move forward to go with something that doesn't demand as much water. The rest of that stuff is more drip irrigation. But to your point, there is a risk.
And I mean, I'm not saying just to your project specifically.
No, I hear you.
Every one we look at has landscaping, and it requires water. And I just think it's time to look at something different.
When you go ahead with the landscaping, does the county have criteria now that we are kind of in a drought situation, as far as the type of plants or recommended, or they can't use other kind? I mean, what's the process there?
Yeah, we have, the county has landscape design guidelines, and we include, a section on, drought tolerant landscaping. And we'll probably see more and more of that as the days go by.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I guess, yeah, I'm thinking about the variance, and I think I got it. But basically, in this case, you voluntarily downzoned to a pattern of development, the medium density development. Correct. And because of that, the thing that's unique about this is the voluntary downzone, but it's also that the adjacent neighborhood, you're trying to blend in with the adjacent neighborhood.
Correct.
With the additional coverage of up to 20 lots, single-story lots.
Correct.
And so that would be up to 50%. Is that basically the statement of the uniqueness or the special circumstance?
I believe that in addition to those, there may be more of a reference to the physical constraints of the site, which is why I point out the swale and drainage improvements. I point out the extraordinary frontage obligation to this vis-a-vis an adjacent project. It just happens to be the configuration. I think those things all contribute to the kinds of findings that the commission would have to make in order to adopt that variance.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Wait, Jeff, did you have another?
Oh, I just was looking and thinking that the additional 5-foot setback that you conceded to obviously shrinks the lot size on anything that's a frontage and necessitates the need to have a little more lot coverage, or is that?
Actually, on those perimeter lots, we don't have as much of an issue with coverage as we do on sort of this interior block.
Interior lots?
Right here. Yeah, we've got a little more depth. These, just because of the, again, the math at a certain street width, and when you start doing the math and dividing this out, you can either put that additional depth throughout, but it made some other things uneven in terms of where this egress needed to be. So these lots along here were actually deeper than most of the others. So it doesn't really have that much of an impact on them.
Dave, one of the big things, at least, that I'm getting out of this, because all the adjacent property around it, those other lots that are being developed right now, they have the 7.5-foot setbacks, right?
They have conditions which are the standard 5-foot single story, 7.5, I think a combined 15. We were looking at
I mean, if you drove through the neighborhood and you looked at the houses, you'd see 15 feet.
Or more in some
or
cases.
More
right.
Between them.
Right.
To where if you built this out basically to the minimums.
Right.
Then if you drove through that neighborhood, then you'd be looking at a bunch of houses that are sort of squeezed in together like the one picture you showed us.
Right.
And then as soon as you got out into the other neighborhood, then all of a sudden you're seeing these houses. So it would look skewed if you were driving in there. And you're just trying to keep everything so it looks sort of the same as you drive through.
Correct. Yeah, and unless somebody was really studying that, it's not going to be perceptible based on the approach that we're taking. Now, again, at 5 foot and 5 is more theoretical. That's what we could do under the B6 zoning. I just use that for frame of reference. But, you know, what we're trying to do is be consistent with the other. And those setbacks, side yard setbacks, for the hidden crossing, when we were looking at the models, those are larger lots. So in some cases, those are even greater than the 7.5.
So it would look more skewed if you.
Right. But to your point, it's not just because we'll never see this again from this angle, right? We'll only see it as we drive by or walk through neighborhood. We don't believe that it's going to be perceptible based on the massing, even with the variance on the single-story homes. And of course, they'll be interspersed throughout so that you don't have all single-story or all two-story. There is a condition that you're probably aware of that 1 out of every 3 along the frontage must be a single-story so that we don't have that two-story massing all the way around the perimeter. So does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
I just did just a real quick calculation here on a 60 by 100-foot lot. I'm going to keep it simple with the 5-foot setbacks on each and 20 front and back, and then increasing it to 7.5, you end up losing 300 square feet.
Right.
You have a 2,700 square foot rectangle instead of 3,000 feet. So it partly makes up for I think you had on the single story, it added, 300 or 400 square feet?
It was actually roughly
variance?
10% of that lot because they're actually 65 feet wide.
Yeah, I know. I was just doing this
Yeah.
just to make it simple.
Right.
But it does, will eliminate 300 to 400 square feet of buildable area by going to the 7.5 versus the 5, approximately 400 square feet or so. So it's made up by the variance on those singles approximately. It's not quite equal match because they're all a little bit different size.
Right.
Just thought I'd throw
No,
that out.
Yep.
The engineer and me coming out.
Yeah.
I do have one question, and I asked Mr. Cook this before, because we are getting them out of commercial on that property. Where are these people going to shop? Because, in Roseville, our plan used to be to put neighborhood commercial, what we call neighborhood commercial, in different areas so people wouldn't have to drive forever to get to it. So maybe you might want to just quickly answer that question.
Well, part of that's going to depend on work commute patterns, where folks are going to or coming from each day. But, south on Walega, there's existing retail within Hillsdale area. North up to Baseline, there is retail up there. You may have to go over to Foothill today, but ultimately at Baseline and Fitiment, which is the extension of Walega, there's going to be additional retail there. This is zoned retail in the specific plan, retail commercial, but I don't think the timing of that is going to get ahead of some of these other locations that I'm talking about. And then, of course, there's going to be some further to the west and north up into Placer Vineyards. So, it's not going to be close by, but those patterns have changed so much over the last 20 years since this plan was adopted because we don't have those corner drugstores as much. There's a certain rooftop and population and traffic count they all need. And then going back to my earlier point, even if you had the rooftops here at this site, because it's just a little bit too small, those points of ingress and egress are too close to the intersection to provide for anything other than right in or right out. So even though we might think it would make sense to have the corner drugstore, the dry cleaner, or what have you there, most of the retailers are going to shy away from that because it is going to make it difficult for folks to provide the business to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this project? Okay, come up and
Morning.
give us your name. And
Yes, my name is Tony Small. I'm a resident of the Sabre City development that's across the way. And I'm just here today to talk to the commission about the negative mitigated declaration and the sound attenuation or the noise factor that's going to occur and is occurring currently with the hidden crossing as well as the proposed Morgan Knolls on the board. Sounds like the negative declaration of the hidden crossing is also being used for the Morgan Knolls, and I apologize I wasn't here to speak on that. It's changed names a few times. I think it went through Silver Creek, It was called something else, but I've been trying to keep an eye on the development that's been taking place, and my input for that is currently we back up to the PFE road. It was purchased with that field open, and it was sure it was going to be developed, which was no problem. But our concern has been an increase of the noise, and reading what the neg deck says also, or mitigated neg deck, it says that there's also going to be an increase of what's allowable through Placer County, and then some. So across the way, the developer has done really well and has put up a 6 to 8 foot berm, earthen berm, and then on top of that, another 6 to 8 foot high sound attenuation for those folks. However, it's a bounce back factor. What you have is you have these folks that are stopping actually right at that entrance, because it's already developed, right at that entrance, and what we hear is the noise coming back, and it's just a rolling noise. So we get to hear, everybody that drives by, and they're already upset that they've just stopped 25 feet away at the stop sign at Billy Mitchell Boulevard, and they let us know by peeling off. I mean, it's pretty typical, at least half a dozen times, and throughout the evening and early morning. So that aside, what we're experiencing as residents, and in talking to my fellow residents, is that we don't have any way of actually mitigating this sound. But as lead agency, as Placer County was a lead agency on this, what we're asking is where was our concern? Were we not part of the process of making sure that we get some sort of mitigation for the noise that's being developed? And I come to you saying, please do not accept the proposed development. I appreciate the voluntary downgrade for trying to go into the residential, but it sounds like it's going to be a difficult sell for any type of. Yes, sir.
I guess it's an existing entryway now that you're talking.
That's correct. Yeah, the stop sign.
And actually, this project doesn't have any entryway on PFE across from you.
No, but as it's been pointed out, the one entrance way that's going to be to that main area, it's going to increase the traffic there, will be that main area, because you're right turn only on Willerga and right in, right out. So you're going to have everybody that's needing to get there will, that's coming along PFE will be turning from that point. And it being a major artery, it's just going to grow because it does connect down to Watt. You keep going down and it connects to Watt. So the studies that have been shown also within the plan shows that there's going to be an increase of trips of over 500 daily trips. And, that's, I don't believe that took into consideration your Riolo vineyards. I don't think it took into consideration this new development. This is the first time I've ever seen that. So if you put that many people there, that many people there, and that many people there, times it by 3, that's 1,500 more trips per day, and we're right there in that main sound area. So my question is that not something that the county, with the mitigated negative declaration, do they not consider that for the existing residents? So with that being said, it's also understood that that area was funded with capital improvement program funds. Is that not correct? The road that was built up, was that not?
Yeah, I think let the county planning answer that.
Sure.
Hi, Rebecca Tabor with Engineering and Surveying. Which road are you talking about?
PFE, as the developer, you see there's a cutoff right there where the entrance is for the new development.
Subdivision, the hidden crossing entrance on PFE?
Yeah, the work that was done on that area, what I understand, if it was capital improvement program funds, that's something that the developer pays into, but it's also Placer County is reimbursed, I believe, federally for those funds, or at least there's a mixing of funds. It may have not been for this specific program, but capital improvement.
For this project, the developer paid for and constructed those improvements on PFE Road.
Okay. And the point I'm trying to make is capital improvement program funds are actually, since they're federally funded in some way or another or some manner, I believe you receive federal funds for fixing roads, or is that not correct?
Well, yeah, but any improvements that go in from a new development, the developer pays for.
Yeah, it's all from the same piggy bank. If federal monies have ever gone into it, it is considered, yes, it is. It's considered, it falls under the guise of Title IX. So I'm just saying, as far as that goes, Title IX has a non-discriminationary aspect to it, and right now it's just being, I'm going through, my options of what to do next, and just knowing that it's part of Title IX, maybe if we can't get the commission to talk or to consider not doing it, then we just go through also maybe talking to Title IX officer, whoever the county is part of.
Let me see, could you point out where you're located on the map?
Sure. The pin?
Yeah, the pin's easier. It's a little.
It's going to be right there. Whoops. So the stop sign is right there, and our backyard is right up to it. So, our 3 kids are out there playing at any time, and windows down, and everybody loves their loud music and so forth. But
yeah, and you don't have a sound. There's no sound wall on your side.
no, there used to be an HOA with that particular area. As you may not know or know, you own your property as well as the homes that are on there. It is, one of those rare mobile home areas where you own your property underneath it, so we don't pay rent. So we get to, fix our property to the county standards. And with this taking place, it has been something considered to do another HOA, maybe get into something where we build it for ourselves. And as you probably know, that's a pretty blighted area. There are some good people there, and I speak of myself as well, but the area is ripe for gentrification. It's ripe for, getting those that are bring it down out. And the sound wall, I think, is something that we as a community need to work on and will, but I'm just asking that the Planning Commission also consider the increase that's going to occur from this development. I mean, the one is already happening, we know this, but doing this one will just exacerbate it. So I'm hopefully I can talk to the development company, and if there's some sort of way in which, they had walls built up, I don't know, maybe we can get some quotes or something about how much it would cost and bring it back to the residents, or maybe if we talk with them and if there's some sort of give and take there, I don't know. But right now, we're just feeling like we're really left out.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to comment? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close it and bring it back to the commission for discussion or action.
Well, I guess I can, we have the rezone and the variance, if we approve it, would be supervisor items, right?
Right.
But at least for now, the other items are planning commission items, so we take it separately?
I think so.
Mr. Chair,
Right.
maybe we can, maybe we can clarify what the commission will be doing in this instance is recommendations on all actions to the board. It's a little change in procedure from what you have done in the past. Completely legal. It's a little bit easier to manage on bringing it forward to the board. So these are all recommendations this time.
I didn't hear that real clearly, but it would be all to the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, so the whole.
Yes, including the map and the variance will all be recommendations.
That includes the negative deck and everything then?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
That includes the negative deck and everything?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, I'll try to make
What I might suggest we do in this case, we've been doing this at the board also, is to have you take each particular request and make a motion and take a vote on that. It helps us to keep the record straight. I suspect we may have to have a little more discussion before you deliberate on the variance, or maybe any one of these, but that's what I'd suggest you do, is let's take them one at a time and go through.
Okay. So I would make a motion that we adopt the mitigated negative declaration errata and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the Morgan Knolls residential subdivision project.
Second.
Have a motion second.
And that would be based on the findings, the staff report, I
Based on the findings? Okay.
I still second it.
Okay, Kathy, roll call.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denio?
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Number 2.
number 2, I make the motion that we forward to the Board of Supervisors our recommendation that we adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan to create a new land use designation of medium-density residential, 2 for 4 dwelling units per acre,
Subject to the fine.
subject to the findings.
I second it.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denio?
Yes. Okay, item 3.
Okay, I make a motion that we forward to the Board of Supervisors an adopted resolution to adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the Dry Creek West Placer Community Plan to change the land use designation on assessor's parcel number 023-221-015-000 from commercial to low-density residential and low-density residential to medium-density residential, subject to the findings.
Do we have a second? I've got a second. Roll call.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denio?
Yes.
Okay, number 4, I make a motion that we forward to the Board of Supervisors the proposal to adopt an ordinance to rezone assessor's parcel number 023-221-015-000 from CPD-DC Commercial Plan Development Combined Designation Scenic Corridor and RSAGV 20 PD equal to residential single family combining agriculture, combining minimum lot size of 20 square feet, combining planned residential development with a maximum of 2 residents per acre to RSAGB X 6000 residential single family combining agriculture, combining building site minimum of 6,000 square feet as per the findings.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Gray?
No.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denio?
Yes. Motion carries.
Now, before you take the motion on the variance one way or the
Oh, we're
other.
going to do the tentative map next.
Pardon me.
Okay,
Before we
so, so I make a motion that we forward to the Board of Supervisors a recommendation for approval of the tentative subdivision map, subject to the finding.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Gray?
No.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes?
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
And to clarify, pardon me, I'm really on a bad roll today. This is to clarify that your motion includes adoption of the conditions of approval, correct?
It clearly includes the adoption of the conditions.
Yeah, except we've got 6 is the one thing that'll be changing, or
Whatever.
whatever comes out, because right now, as the conditions show, it's doesn't have.
Maybe we better
rest
do the
of that.
conditions last. Okay?
Condition says maybe.
That-
I think we got an okay. Okay, well, at this
Well, I
point,
mean, from a
at this point, we probably need to discuss the variance.
right, but
Yes.
So we have a motion on the table right now for approval of the tentative subdivision map.
And
We need to do the roll call, all right?
Yeah, so I'd ask you to finish
Yeah,
that
so
motion,
just,
and
and
then
then we'll do the condition
that's fine.
afterwards. Yeah, okay. We got a motion second on approving the tentative subdivision map. Roll call?
Mr. Gray?
No.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Rikucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denayo?
Yes. Okay, now 6. That's
So I guess
increase.
discussion on 6,
Yeah.
do we need to amend the findings if we are going to have a motion or entertain a motion that would approve the variance?
Yes.
And do you have some worded for us?
Well, you need to, if the majority of the commission wishes to recommend approval of the variance in some fashion, I'm guessing based on applicant's current proposal, then the commission needs to articulate the findings to support the variance based on the evidence, testimony that's been presented in the record. So I can walk through each one of those findings for you, and if you could articulate on the record what findings might support that, that would then shore up the record. Because as you noticed in the staff report, staff found, based on the original proposal, that there were no findings that could support the grant of a variance. And as this commission has seen before, a variance, the findings are strictly construed based on state law. The first one being special circumstances related to topography, and I should say including but not limited to topography, location, surroundings, and other circumstances that would render the strict application of the lot coverage a deprivation of privileges otherwise enjoyed by other subdivisions in this vicinity with the identical zoning. So your first finding, if you are going to bring a motion to grant a variance or recommendation to grant a variance, is to identify what special circumstances you have now identified based on this hearing that would support that.
So the keeping consistent, you're talking surroundings and neighborhood, so keeping lot plan and design consistent with the neighborhood would be an adequate finding?
It would.
Could be an adequate finding, I guess?
I believe the applicant also mentioned that this is infill. And I'm not putting words in the commission's mouth, but what I have heard are infill, smart growth principles, making sure that the circulation is consistent with the existing subdivision. Those are the type of circumstances that the Planning Commission must identify if you wish to support a grant of a variance.
Well, I'll go at this point and indicate that at least my thoughts are to support the variance.
And obviously, my thoughts are against it, primarily because as soon as somebody else shows up and asks for the same kind of a variance, we'd be very hard put to grant them solely on an economic.
I don't think it's solely economics.
I do. They could give up 2 lots and not have to have a variance at all. It's strictly money.
No, I guess I'm not seeing it that way.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Motion?
Okay, those were grand words. I don't know if I could.
Yeah, what's the finding you're going to use?
Okay, you want to try it?
I would make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors to approve the variance to increase the maximum lot coverage from currently adopted 40% for one-story homes to 50% on 20 lots within the subdivision. I would like to add to the findings, I guess, the consistency that was discussed with the neighborhood development, the smart growth principles,
Infill.
and the infill project as justification or that to approve the variance.
Second.
Have a motion second. Roll call.
So just before you make a vote, there's a question of not, or whether or not that just applied on lots of 7,500 square feet or less. Is that correct?
I would have no problem amending my motion to reflect that.
And instead of saying on 20 lots, no more than 20 lots?
Maximum.
Up to 20
Up
lots.
to 20 lots,
Maximum.
no more than 7,500 square feet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I still second.
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Gray?
No.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes?
Mr. Denayo?
Yes. Okay,
Do next finding, number 2,
okay, net,
physical conditions.
I think,
Oh, do we have to deal with the conditions?
yeah, well, that, so,
If the commission could now direct staff to revise the conditions to be consistent with the planning commission's recommendations to the board?
I would do that. I mean,
Yeah.
if that needs a motion or whatever, I don't know formally how we do that, but
do you want a formal
sorry?
motion?
Or
Just
Or
direction.
just direction, I mean,
Direction's
I
fine.
think the direction, because it was the majority. That way, if that's good enough, so giving you direction. Forward that. Okay, that takes care of it. Anybody would wish to appeal, you have 10 calendar days, and the appeal fee is $546.
is there anything to appeal since this was just a recommendation to the board?
Or I guess,
Can we ask county council on that question?
yeah.
Yes, so since it's going to the board,
It's-
there are no
their
appeal rights,
appeal
this is a
would go to the
recommendation.
board. Yeah, just,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
okay, I
Save
guess,
$500 and showed up to the board meeting.
Yes.
Don't even have to pay $5.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say just a follow-up, now that we've made all the motions. Something was brought up about the existing residents along, and this could apply to almost any arterial or any kind of road that is going to see increased traffic. And I know there's funding from time to time. I mean, the Caltrans goes out and puts sound walls up because they've increased the lane of traffic and the adjacent residents need a sound wall. And I'd like to just ask staff, if I can, and maybe I can just ask it individually, but to see if there are any kind of mitigation funds available through varied sources for sound walls or sound mitigation for the Sabre City or any others along these arterials that I think we need to address those as development occurs along these roads that aren't affronted right to the development itself.
Yeah, and this is not a new issue, and particularly right there on PFE Road, this has come up before. There's been discussions about it, and it's something we can look into and see what.
Well, yeah, I'm not expecting an answer today. I think
What I'm saying is maybe the gentleman who showed up to speak today, maybe he can leave us his contact information before he leaves, and we'll be happy to get in touch with him and see what's out there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up to that, maybe instead of, the county providing funds to do that kind of a project, maybe there's a financing mechanism that can be provided to these older developments to be able to do something like that, so that they wouldn't have to come up with the money themselves necessarily.
Yeah, we'll be happy to look into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Sherry Conway, Senior Planner, Placer County Planning Services Division. We're here today to have your consideration for the Orchard at Penryn project. For some of you, most of you, this may ring a bell. This project is located in the community of Penryn on the west side of Penryn Road, approximately a half a mile north of Interstate 80. This is Interstate 80. This is Penryn Road. This gives you a broader bird's eye view of the area. Project site is presently undeveloped with no existing structures. The site has approximately 495 feet of frontage along Penryn Road. This is Penryn Road right here. And about 60 feet of frontage along Taylor Road, right up here. Topography of the site is gently sloping, with elevations ranging in the vicinity of 400 to 500 feet above sea level. Predominant habitat types on the site are oak woodland, annual grassland, riparian scrub. There is a drainage swale that crosses the site from north to south along the eastern boundary. That's this vegetation that you see here. And there's another drainage swale that crosses north to south in about the middle portion of the site. These swales carry water into Secret Ravine further to the south. And properties, as you can see, adjacent to the site in the north and in the west are predominantly rural residential uses. The brand new Loomis Equine Medical Center is to the east on the other side of Penryn Road, and the Hope Lutheran Church sits to the south. So hopefully you're all oriented now. In 2007, Penryn Development LLC filed an application here with the county to develop 150 multifamily residential dwelling units. This project, as you probably recall, was approved. It included a tentative map, a conditional use permit, and I think that was it. The county did prepare and certify an EIR in December of 2012. And due to a changing economic climate, the applicant has now come back and determined that this previously approved project that consisted of clusters of multifamily residential units is no longer financially viable and is instead now seeking a modification of this project to allow instead a reduced density single-family residential project on this very same site. So just again, revisiting this site, still the same site, I want to emphasize that the entitlements that the applicant acquired just in 2012 still stand. They've chosen not to pursue I guess I can't go backward. They've chosen at this time not to pursue these products, but I want to emphasize that entitlement does still stand. As I said, they've now submitted a new application to modify the previously approved project. This project would allow 54 single-family residential lots on approximately 15 acres. The currently proposed project would have lot sizes ranging from about 4,000 to 12,000 square feet. Project site would include 6 lots in common ownership. Let's see if we can get you there. We've got the 1, 2, the drainage swale to the north, the drainage swale to the south would be considered open space lots. There would be a tot lot, which is indicated as Lot C on your site plan, as well as guest parking areas scattered throughout the site, and the roadways, and 2 landscape corridors along that Penryn Road frontage. Primary vehicular access, as with the previous project, would be from Penryn Road, with an exit-only access out onto Taylor Road. And both of the proposed access points would be gated. On-site circulation, as you can see, would be provided from one primary east-west road. This would cross over this drainage swale here. And the 2 looped roads would connect to that primary east-west corridor. Proposed project would also include this 30-foot landscape easement along Penryn Road, on-site landscaping and placement of utilities throughout. let's see. I want to kind of cut to the chase here with the next slide. So as I stated, they do have an approved project on record, and I wanted to quickly review what the comparison between the two projects are. Obviously, much reduced density from 150 units down to 54. Corresponding local population reduction from 420 to 152 persons. The new project proposes single family as opposed to multifamily homes. Reduced visual impacts because of the smaller scale and mass of these new products. Decreased water demand, we were just talking about the drought, from 60 acre feet to 29 or so acre feet of water annually. Reduction in the ambient noise. With the prior project, if you recall, there was a proposed community center, community pool. So with the elimination of those facilities and outdoor activities conducted primarily in the yards of the residences, there's less ambient noise expected. Fewer daily vehicle trips, down from 989 to 516. Overall, less solid waste generation, no surprise there. And then a reduced overall volume of soil cuts and fills. Kind of to get your bearings if you haven't been out there for a while. The site remains, as I said, undeveloped. This is kind of looking north along Penryn Road. And I'm happy to go back to any of these slides as you request. This is a site looking south from Taylor Road. I'll kind of dive into a couple of the issues that are articulated in my staff report. And then, of course, we can go into more detail with any questions that you might have. The project is looking for an overall rezone. Currently, the project site, just to back up a little bit, is designated as a Penryn Parkway in the Horseshoe Bar Penryn Community Plan. Almost 10 acres of the site is zoned residential multifamily, combining density limitation of 10 dwelling limits per acre, the combining planned residential development of 10 dwelling units per acre. The remaining 5.2 acres is zoned C1 UPDC, which of course is neighborhood commercial, combining use permit required, combining design, scenic corridor. Project applicant is proposing to rezone both of the existing parcels to RSB4, and that stands for residential single family, combining minimum building site size of 4,000 square feet. That proposed rezone is consistent with the community plan designation of Penryn Parkway. So they're not looking for a general plan amendment, simply a rezone. Moving forward with some of the other entitlements that they have requested is a variance to parking. And I'm going to loop back to the site plan in a moment to better give you a visual. But essentially, each of the lots would provide 2 driveway spaces in addition to the 2 spaces provided in the garages. In addition, 28 additional spaces would be located throughout the project site for guest parking. On-street parking is permitted on the main road, but not permitted on those 2 smaller looped roads. And then overall, per section 1754-060B5 of our zoning ordinance, the project should otherwise require a total of 158 spaces. The applicant is requesting a variance to the parking standard of 136. Let me go back quickly so you can. I know it shouldn't matter. 1 more, 2 more. There we go. So the looped road, the east-west road is wide enough to accommodate 1 side parking on the south side. The 2 looped roads are actually proposed to be designed at 28 feet, which is too narrow to allow on-street parking. And so the applicant is proposing several pockets of guest parking, about 7 spaces each. So there's 1 here, 1 here, 1 here near the tot lot, and then 1 here by the exit to Taylor Road. In addition, as I said, each lot would accommodate 2 spaces in their driveway, additional 2 in their garage, parking along the south side of the east-west road. So where the deficiency lies is the fact that on-street parking would not be permitted along these looped roads. therefore the basis for the request of the parking variance. Let's see if we can get back to where we were. I want to just remind you all that development of this proposed project would require grading for building pads, roadways, utilities, etc. And as a result, most of the project site would be graded. The project site was formerly, as most properties in the Penryn and Loomis area, was used as a fruit orchard in the early part of the 1900s. Throughout that century, common use of pesticides resulted in kind of widespread contamination of soils in the area, and particularly on this site. Site remediation is therefore proposed as part of this project. The applicant has and had prepared for the prior project a removal action work plan. It's been approved by the California Department of Toxic Substances Control. What we call the RAW describes the evacuation and off-haul of the affected soil that would be completed to reduce that soil-related contaminants to levels that do not pose any further threat to human health, as well as to reduce the potential for ongoing adverse ecological effects. Visual resources was an issue that was addressed during the discussion of the previously approved project. So I wanted to revisit that and discuss with this new project, a 30-foot landscape easement along Penryn Road will help reduce that visual impact as you drive up and down Penryn Road. With these single-family residences, there will be a maximum height of 30 feet, so that will further serve to reduce visual impacts. And the overall reduction in the scale and mass will help contain sort of that, with the loss of the trees, with the loss of the vegetation that's on site, overall reduction in mass should help minimize. As I said, they're proposing a fairly robust landscape easement along Penryn Road here, 30 feet. Landscaping throughout the project. Along the northern corridor, particularly where there are residences, additional landscape efforts will be made to mitigate visual impacts from those rural houses to the north. Let's see. Also want to point out is an increased setback requirement for all of the properties that flank the north and the south property lines. They'll have to be pulled back to 20 feet off of those lines to give a little bit of buffer between the neighboring properties to the north and south of the site. Noise was also an issue that was brought up during the approval process of the first project. So with this project, they're proposing to have some noise attenuation, either in the form of a berm or possibly a sound wall, to further mitigate noise for the backyards of these 4 properties. The applicant has proposed, as was the case with the first and currently approved project, a gate. This is a proposed design. Obviously, this project is subject to design review, so we'll get more detail. If the project is approved and moves forward, they'll have to come in and go through that design review process. But this is a tentative design of that front gate. You can see they've got some stone pillars. The entire perimeter is proposed to have an open wrought iron gate fence. I want to just touch on CEQA really quickly. And each of you should have in your packet the addendum to the EIR. The addendum is accompanied by a supplemental checklist to the previously approved EIR, and we do have copies of the original draft and final EIR. So we relied on the prior certified document, and as lead agency, we had to decide and determine if this currently proposed single-family residential development would result in either new or more severe environmental impacts than those that were evaluated in the prior EIR. Based on the conclusions provided in the supplemental checklist, which you should have, we've concluded that an addendum to the previously certified EIR was the appropriate document. And then the findings for that are articulated below. I can read them if you like. I think I'll wrap up my presentation and of course, be happy to answer any questions that you have on this project. I know that both the applicant, his counsel, and our environmental consultant are all here, and hopefully they can help you get the information you need.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
On the original approval, was a rezone required?
No, it wasn't. The original approval was for a multifamily residential project, which under the prior zoning was permitted. So currently, 9.92 acres of the site are already zoned multifamily residential, and the remaining 5.2 acres was zoned C1, in which multifamily residences are permitted. With the request to switch everything to single-family residential, the rezone request came forward. Different project.
Yeah, I was looking through the documents, and there's a lot of figures about the oak woodland that disappears and wetlands that disappear and those types of things. And there's a swale in the middle that is going to be, it looks like it's about 2 acres will be remaining. And so I guess what I was a little bit unclear about is what's intended in that swale as far as they can remove the oaks, or what are they going to do in that particular area as far as the...
So the open space area in the center
Yeah.
of the site would be preserved, including the trees.
As it is?
As it is.
Okay.
There will be grading plans that come forward, and I'm sure Catherine can articulate a little bit better. The swale to the east of the site, though, would be piped. So the removal action plan to remediate the soils would remove soil from everything to the east of the swale and everything to the west of the swale, including all of those oaks.
Yeah. That's what I was reading. Let me see, there was reference to, after it's all done, there's going to be 0.07 acres of wetland and 0.08 acres of riparian habitat. I'm presuming that's all in the center swale?
That's correct. And that'll be, that's that common area. It's bifurcated by the access road, but otherwise will remain intact. So this, and it'll be fenced with that wrought iron open fencing here, commonly owned by the HOA.
Okay. And then one more question. It appeared that the central swale actually, even though it's an intermittent stream, but it sounds like it's running most of the time during the year. And then there's also a picture of a small swale that branches off to the west of the central swale. It also has water in it. And I was wondering, that'll be filled in, but how do they address the water that's normally running down that swale, I guess, most of the year also, or if it is?
I might defer to Phil on that one.
Swale you're talking about? There's a swale right down the middle, but you said something branches off to the west?
Yeah, on the contour map, and there's a picture in the document that shows a western swale from the central swale that actually has water in it too.
Yeah, I'm not remembering that. I only remember the swale to near the Penryn Road frontage and the swale down the middle. Both will be maintained, and both drainages will be discharged in the same existing spot that they are today. So if there's any swale that's heading off to the west, that runoff will be collected and discharged in its...
Well, it's going to be filled in, and so there must be a water source that's causing that to flow.
So if it's running into the site, it will be maintained. Whatever's coming into the site will be maintained and conveyed through the project site.
Well, it's going to be filled in. Yeah, you might want to look at the map.
I'll take a look and see if I can find what you're
and
talking
it clearly shows in the aerial photograph too.
Commissioner, we have actually the applicant who could articulate.
Okay, I have one question, because from the original project, wasn't everything was going to be covered? right?
Covered
with the
as
high
far as-
density, everything was
This is the original project, and
Right.
as with the proposed project, a complete site remediation would have been required.
right. And so actually, there would have been more dirt moved on the original plan than on this existing. So from a mitigation standpoint, the original plan actually had higher mitigation requirements than what we're looking at today.
Correct.
Okay.
With regard to soils or something?
Soils and wetlands.
Right. The applicant did have an updated biological report done, and that is actually contained in your packet as well, attached to the addendum. So they did, in the newer delineation, come up with some different numbers of wetlands. Not terribly different, but slightly different. The original project began back in 2007, so they did have it recommissioned this past year, and they did come up with some different findings. Did you want to? He was going to clarify for you.
If I can jump
once
in,
again.
Chairman,
Okay.
Let me put that back. If I can jump in, I was obviously the original planner on this project when it came through the first time, so I have a little intimate knowledge of it. But the most of the disturbance to the site was going to occur because of the removal action work plan. And that plan that was originally in place and approved is the same plan that is in place now. So that's where all the disturbance of the site's gonna, that's where it's gonna come from. The natural swell that goes through the central portion of the property, that was preserved with the original project, the 150 unit project, and it will also be preserved as part of this project.
Does that answer your question, Rich, or is it?
Well, there's a smaller swale that runs into the central swale. It'll be filled in, and if that runs water most of the year, I was just asking, I guess from an engineering standpoint, how do you address the water? Address
Mr.
that
Chairman?
swale in terms of eliminating the water or solve the problem?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, so if I'm looking at this particular figure 3, in the addendum, it shows that there's maybe something right in this area that's draining towards the central swale. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that runoff will be collected with all the on-site improvements and discharged into this same swale that will be conveyed out through the existing discharge point.
So there's not an underground source?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Just surface runoff?
Yeah.
Just surface runoff where, from the streets
Correct.
and all the drains.
Yes.
It all ends up in the center.
In that central swale, yes.
Yeah, I guess it's unclear whether or not that was really looked into, if it's a subsurface type of well.
A groundwater environmental health usually addresses that. Does anybody here from environmental health? Or I don't know if Catherine has that answer.
Okay.
We'll let the master come up.
Would you like the, that was all analyzed, there, it's not groundwater, it's, again, that little finger you're talking about, it just dead ends. It doesn't go anywhere, it dead ends. That's gonna be part of the fill that's been analyzed. It's been analyzed in our core process. It was analyzed in EIR, and that's not changing from what the current project is.
Okay, so then maybe the picture I was seeing, the central swale appears to run water most of the year, but I guess
That's being preserved, and actually, the impacts are less because with the multifamily project, if you go back to the road, but beneath the road, there was going to be a detention basin, so there were greater impacts to biological resources. That swale with the single-family projects being removed, the area is being kept natural south of the roadway, so you actually have fewer impacts in that central swale because of the removal of the detention basin.
Okay. I think I got it. Well, almost got answered.
But the finger is just basically it's an intermittent, and it basically is not filled all the time or even most of the year. It's just a finger that dead ends. It doesn't go anywhere, and that's being removed as part of the removal action work plan.
It doesn't run water.
No.
Very much.
No. It's really the central swale that does.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Sure you go.
The applicant is here, as is Catherine Waugh from DUDAC, our environmental consultant, so if you need them.
Oh, okay, if there's no questions for staff, go ahead and let applicant Marcus.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome, Mark.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Marcus LaDuca, 3200 Douglas Boulevard in Roseville. On behalf of the owner and applicant, I'm pleased to be before you today with a recommendation from both your staff and the Horseshoe Bar Penryn MAC for approval of a project that proposes nearly 2/3 reduction in density from the project that this Commission recommended approval of nearly 3 years ago. The reduced project, as staff mentioned, comes before you as a result of a very challenging financing conditions for apartment projects in the greater Sacramento region. That earlier process for the approved apartment project took nearly 7 years to complete by the time we went to the Board of Supervisors in 2012. Since that time, we now have faced, over the last nearly 2.5 years, a financing marketplace that has really seen no market rate apartment projects built in Northern California outside of the Bay Area, and a few very small projects that are heavily subsidized in downtown Sacramento. Add into that the fact that for a market rate apartment, or any apartment project in this region, you have to pay Bay Area wages to get any workers to actually build them. We've had increasing materials costs during that time period. So even though the economy has not been very vibrant for part of that period, we've still seen increasing materials costs. My client has faced a very difficult decision. As a long-term apartment builder and owner throughout the western United States, they could keep their entitlements in place for a project that is no longer financeable or feasible, or consider an alternative land use. So they've worked on this property for nearly 10 years. So after that, they decided to defer to the marketplace and come back to you with a project with 54 single-family homes, which ironically is even fewer than the 60 that was recommended by folks in the community who were opposed to the apartment project over that process that was culminated in 2012. As Sherry just mentioned in the staff report and the addendum note, the project before you will have actually reduced impacts in a whole number of areas, not just the few that were mentioned, visual, noise, solid waste, water demand, also heavy reduction in traffic, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, reduced cut and fill. The project will still be removing the contaminated soil. It's required. Pretty much nearly all the impacts on the site are due to the removal action work plan, which has now been approved by the state since this commission last saw the project. We're still going to be preserving that central riparian area. The significant rock outcroppings will still be preserved. And again, the removal of that contaminated soil isn't just for purposes of a land use on the site. It actually is going to improve water quality downstream, because currently the water flows through the site and is going downstream with, over those contaminated soils. Our request for a parking variance is meant for a couple of reasons. One, looking at the site, we think that there's adequate parking on the site with the parking areas we provided. But by just in those loop roads, having that narrower street section, it also has some water quality benefits as well. Otherwise, you're going to basically be increasing the entire street section throughout the project. And the idea, particularly with the new water quality standards coming down from the state that are now effective, you have to look for every way possible to try to minimize your water quality impacts and your pretreatment before discharge. And so having less pervious or impervious surface is one of the ways that the projects look to, and we saw that as a potential benefit, and as the analysis showed, we still can adequately park the project. We've worked with our neighbors, worked with the MAC as this project has gone through the process. We're happy to have the support of the MAC as we proceed forward to you and ultimately to the board. My client still stands behind their commitment they made last time to the elementary school district and to the Delaro Pool project to continue the contributions that they'll make to those. Even though we've lost nearly 100 units, they made that commitment and they stand by them. Again, that's off conditions. It was simply what they looked at in terms of benefit to the public, and they've stood by those commitments, and we'll carry those through should this commission and ultimately the board approve the project. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. We'd ask for your recommendation to the board for approval of the project as it's been presented to you today and as the conditions have been revised in the errata sheet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
Yeah, I probably have a minor issue.
Sure.
Basically, the project to me so far seems like it's pretty good. But in the MAC meeting, somebody brought up the idea of deer.
Mm-hmm.
And the project is going to be fenced all the way around.
Correct.
And I think I saw in the document that somebody had declared that there's not a corridor going down through the project, but normally animals will follow a riparian area stream. And we have that open area in the middle. I guess what I'm thinking, and I don't know what kind of fence, or if it's going to be a tall fence or anything, but if it's
be a
like
6-foot open fence. So in other words, most critters are going to be able to, whether they're skunks, raccoons, whatever, they'll be able to get through that. My client has talked, as staff mentioned, we'll go through design review about at that central swale possibly creating a larger opening at the bottom so that animals can get through, particularly, for example, deer, so they can. It won't be left completely open. You want both for our neighbors and for the project itself to have the fencing there, but they can create, so as opposed to going all the way flat to the ground, they can create a larger opening that animals can scoot under.
So that that was what my concern was, because I could think that, if there wasn't some provision and you got deer trapped inside, then you got a problem. If they get in, or
yeah, you don't want them getting in, not getting out. That wouldn't be a good thing.
You don't want them not to get out, and then if they can't get through there, then if you force them out on the street, then you're going to have carnage out in the streets. So.
Right. The idea was to do that so that both at the northern end of the central swale and the southern end, which again will not be a detention basin anymore, that you could possibly have the opening at the bottom larger, just so the animals can go in and out.
Okay.
And so my client already talked to staff, and they can do that as part of the design review when they go to staff as part of that fencing detail.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like no other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would anyone from the public like to comment on this project? Okay, seeing none, I'll close it off and bring it back to the commission for discussion or motion.
I just have a quick question on the errata sheet regarding the building permit fees or the park and recreation facilities fee, I guess it is.
That's correct.
If no final map is recorded, can they actually get a building permit to build?
No.
So do we need this condition in here?
This condition was provided by Andy Fisher, Parks.
Sorry, Andy.
And I think he left. We're running late. He had to go. So, yeah, this is his condition that gives credit, partial credit for the tot lot.
Okay.
Recommendation to the board. It can be, if necessary, clarified within the condition when it goes to the board.
Well,
Noting your
I certainly would want the developer to get credit for building the tot lot and that, but to condition it on something that is a condition that already exists, redundant is not a good thing,
May I, Mr. Chairman, that sentence you're talking about, if no final map is recorded, typically you'll sometimes see that in other contexts which don't involve maps, and so it's just a building permit. So it's just that language I've seen in other jurisdictions language. It's a carryover that's put in. It's that sentence is the one, because obviously in this case you don't have a project without a final map.
Exactly.
Moving forward, there won't be any building permits issued until a final map in this case, because it's a residential project. But a non-residential project, for example, will sometimes not have a map. We'll just have, so there isn't the final map to record, and they still might have some park fees to pay or other type of fees.
I can live with it, I guess. I just
Okay, any other discussion? Anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I guess, or you want to do this? Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they adopt the addendum to the previously certified orchard at Penryn Final Environmental Impact Report and amend the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. That we adopt an ordinance to rezone the 15.1 acre site from RM-DL10 PD10 to, let's see here.
It's on the board if you want to.
Well, glasses work better close. Residential multifamily combining density limitation of 10 units per acre, combining planned residential development of 10 units per acre, and C1 UPDC. Neighborhood commercial combining use permit, combined design scenic corridor, 2, RSB4, residential single family combined building site of 4,000 square feet. Recommend that we approve the vesting tentative map and approve a variance to section 17.54.06B5 of the zoning ordinance to allow for a reduction in the required parking standards from 158 to 136 spaces.
Based on the findings.
Based on the findings. And the conditions of approval. And the errata sheet.
And we can do the variance later? Oh, you did.
I already did that.
Yeah, got that. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion second. Roll call?
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denayo?
Yes. Motion carries, so
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you all. Now we'll go ahead to item number 3. And that's.
I'll go ahead and take that item.
We have to formally.
We do. But I'll make this simple. So the next item before you is the Ponds Pavilion and Lofts project. We're asking that you continue this to the May 7th meeting. So I'm going to ask you to do 2 things here. First is to look at May 7th as a special planning commission date and take a motion on approving that special planning commission date. And then the second action would be to act on the continuance for the Ponds Pavilion project.
Okay, do we have a motion for a special hearing date?
Okay, so moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, got a motion second. Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes, okay, that carries. And now for
Thank you.
second part of that.
Oh, that we continue the Pond Pavilion and Lofts proposal to May 7th?
And if I can add to that, to a time to be determined.
To a time to be determined.
Thank you.
Motion second. Roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I was just going to ask a question, if I could, on the item that came before us under the public comment. Is that something we're going to hear on the 7th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I just wanna confirm
our
that.
plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And we will see you the 7th.